All right, let's talk Chicago Bears. Obviously, this team playing great football. Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, that defense for sure. That running game emerging, but the Bears playing better and better and emerging as a top flight contender in the NFC. It can be traced back to a couple really smart moves that haven't gotten a lot of attention, but when you break it down, it was a great job by the Bears, and we'll talk about that today, plus some interesting data as always. But first, I'm Nick, that is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Chicago Bears, especially after their dismantling of the Philadelphia Eagles on Black Friday, have emerged as a serious contender in the NFC. They were kind of a feel-good story, right? Bouncing back after a disappointing 2024 campaign, playing really good football. They're in the playoff mix. Now they're one of the top teams in that entire conference. Massive matchup this weekend, of course, coming against the Green Bay Packers. But as the Bears have played more physical over the past month or so, something that's gone under the radar is the usage of one of their key new additions, one of their rookies, and that's Ozzie Trapillo. Trapillo was a guy that didn't get a lot of playing time for the vast majority of the first half of the season, sans that one game, I believe, against the Raiders where he stepped in due to injury. They gave Theo Benedict some opportunities. Trapillo emerged first as a heavy tackle and then got more and more and more playing time, and he has emerged as a key piece, and the Bears are really excited by him, and they plan to unleash him even more. Let's get into the article here, then we'll get into the data on the other side. This is courtesy of Bear Goggles On, Great Bears blogging website if you're looking for one. From the report, the Chicago Bears are of the mindset that, after the 2024 nightmare, there is no such thing as having too many quality offensive linemen. This may have explained the decision to use a second-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft on another offensive tackle in Ozzie Trapillo. Trapillo has been a starter in the last two Bears games, both of which have been wins. The latest updates from head coach Ben Johnson is making it seem as though the Bears are ready to finally give Trapillo all the rope he needs to eventually become a key part of their future. Johnson said that he is always going to play the guy that gives us the best chance to win the ball game, and added that Trapillo is an ascending player, that's important, and that this coaching staff believes in him. The training wheels are coming off. Yeah, Trapillo was a guy in the preseason, and we covered him at the time with some good film reviews, and we talked about how he's a guy that has the skill set needed, the length, natural pass protection. What about run blocking? What about timing? Can he figure that out? And it took a little bit of time, but the Bears took a really smart approach when it came to Trapillo. They introduced him as a heavy tackle post by a six offensive lineman in a lot of situations, a sort of a low pressure deal where you don't have to have the key blocks on double teams or working up to the next level. You're doing a lot of backside scoops as a heavy tackle. You're doing a lot of base blocking defensive ends on the edge. Still an important job, but not the whole weight of the world isn't on you when it comes to the running game. And Trapillo did well. They did that a few more games. He continued to do better. And then, of course, we've seen him be the starter over the last 2 weeks. And when you look at this Bears team and the improvement they've had this season, it can be traced back to a willingness to make changes and the willingness to make moves just like this. So just to kind of set the table here, let's pull up a tweet or a post on X, whatever the kids call it this day and age, courtesy of Tej Seth, does a lot of analytics work. He posted, it's a pretty easy one, pretty simple one. Since their bye, the Bears are 8th in expected points added per play, 2nd in expected points added per design rush, and 10th in expected points added per dropback. The second one, to me, is what really strikes out when I look at the Trapillo effect. Because again, Trapillo being the heavy tackle primarily in the run game. Obviously, he started becoming that sixth tackle, the sixth lineman, that heavy tackle, much later than the bye, but really his emergence has accelerated this offense's efficiency, certainly when it comes to run blocking. And now, of course, a starter over the last 2 weeks, dropped a 30-burger against Pittsburgh and absolutely manhandled the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, at 24 points doesn't light the world on fire, but boy, oh boy, it is as much of, it felt like 50. Like the Bears just ran all over them like it was nothing. Like it was just physical dominance from the Chicago Bears. And that's what we've seen post-bye. And a big part of that has been the emergence of Trapillo. In fact, when you look into some efficiency metrics, and we got a graphic here per True Media, let's pull that up as well, Mize, if you don't mind, that since Trapillo has gotten more usage, we've seen the Bears' offense efficiency increase. So we're going to look back all the way back to the Ravens game. That was the first game Trapillo started being used as a heavy tackle. They averaged points per drive now, which is kind of a good efficiency metric I like to use for a team like the Bears that's balanced, right? Run the football, pass the football, right? You want to see how many times you can score on a per drive basis. Against the Ravens, not a great game, right? But that's the first time they used that. Against the Bengals, they exploded, but it was a terrible Cincinnati defense. So we'll put that to the side, kind of two outliers there. But then you notice a trend, right? Against the Giants and against the Vikings, you can see they averaged 2 points per drive. That's not bad. And then 1.58 against the Vikings. So they like what they're seeing from Trapillo, but then they move him to the full-time starter. And what do you see over the last two games? 2.58 points per drive against the Steelers, and then 2 points per drive against the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, we're seeing improvement. We're seeing the efficiency of the this team really take off as Trapillo starts getting usage, gets more comfortable, and then gets moved to the starting lineup. And that's the really smart point here I want to end on here when it comes to my monologue about Trapillo. When it comes to good organizations, whether they're football teams or businesses or whatever, right? You want to fire what's called by a lot of writers calibrated cannonballs, right? You just don't want to go all in and just say, we're going to do this. We're just going to go all in on one player, one strategy, and see what happens. You want to fire a few shots and say, okay, does this work? Does this work? And if you see some good data points, then you go all in that arena. That's what the Bears did with Trapillo, right? They didn't immediately make Trapillo the starter and say, listen, you're our starter at left tackle by hell or high water. We're going to ride or die by you. They put him in as a heavy tackle for a bunch of games. Hey, how are things going? Can he handle it? Does he do fine? Does he do good run blocking, pass blocking? And then they introduce him as a starter. And then they roll with that for a few games. The offense gets more efficient. He's playing well. And now they're just taking the training wheels off. They're going to fully unleash him. Again, that's what's called firing a calibrated cannonball. You don't just fire shots out in the dark and hope something happens. You don't make Trapillo the starter at left tackle right out of the bye and just hope it works. You give him some reps at heavy tackle. Do that for a few games. Make him the starter. If that goes well, do that for a few games on kind of a training wheels basis. And now that he's comfortable, you can fully unleash him. This is really good player development. This is really good roster management and just overall a really great job by the Chicago Bears, of course, led by Ben Johnson. One of the many reasons why they're 9-3 is, of course, a defense that's great in takeaways, an offense that's become very physical and very explosive. But don't discount Johnson's ability to develop and utilize the players on his roster. It's their secret sauce, and it's a big reason why the Bears are right now on top of the NFC North. All right, Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. But first, Bears fans in the comment section below, obviously massive matchup this weekend against the Green Bay Packers. Now's your chance. Give us your prediction. Final score, Bears, Packers, big game, of course. Want to hear from you guys. Put your prediction in the comment section below. But Miles, enough from me. Over to you now. Give us your thoughts on all things Chicago.
Yeah, Nick, I think your adage there, the calculated cannonballs method, has been something that the Bears has been doing a little bit recently, and just had some good. They've made calculated decisions. They've made moves, and not they haven't put all their eggs in one basket, so to speak. Kind of like I explained it. I think it's gone, and it's gone very well. And I do think obviously the Trapillo move is really at the top of the list, something that's really paid off, but it goes further than that, because that's part of the bigger move of when Ben Johnson came into the picture here. I think we all knew that the Bears had the idea of, okay, we have our quarterback. Now we have the guy that's going to go develop our quarterback. What are we going to do? We really need to make sure the offensive line works out. They went out, they get guys like Thuney, guys like Dahlman, and some people would have been like, okay, that's enough. Let's, leave it there. Let's leave the offensive line as is. We got Braxton Jones. We got, some other great players like Darnell Wright, who's been doing good for us. Let's just leave it like that. Let's keep going. But no, what do? They keep going. They throughout the process, they've picked up guys like Jonah Jackson. They drafted guys like Theo Benedette. They've got Trapillo this season as well. And just through the culmination of the offensive line project, they hit the big ones. Went out and got guys like Thuney. They got guys like Dahlman. But then they said, okay, well, we can't just assume that it's going to work. Let's get some contingencies in place. Let's get guys like Theo Benedette along the way. Get like guys like Jonah Jackson, guys that are a little bit lower on the totem pole as far as skill level, or knowing as far as these draft picks go, like guys that we know will be good or not. Let's, at least take the gamble on it and see what happens. And it has turned out. And the Bears offensive line, it looks great. And I think it's a large reason as to why they're one of the contenders in the NFC right now. Especially you see things pan out. They have a guy like Braxton Jones who's been up and down, injuries, all kinds of stuff limiting his career. But you went out, you spent the draft pick on Trapillo, kind of rounded things out, made you even better in the long run. So I really think it's a great move. It's like for instance, with the receiving game, they pick up last year a guy like Romo Dunes, then they get DJ Moore, and they could have said, okay, we got two good receivers for our quarterback. Let's stop there. But no, what do? They go, all right, let's get him a great receiving tight end in Colston Loveland, but also let's pick up Luther Burden as well and just really double down, make sure we cover all of our bases multiple times over. Let's not fail whatsoever. So I think the intelligence of Ryan Poles with the execution of Ben Johnson is the secret sauce here. I think Poles has been making a lot of good moves. If you go back a couple of years, we've talked about it time in and again, of really great trades that Ryan Poles has made, really good roster management, a lot of good pickups. There's been some bad ones, but I think overall he's done a pretty good job. he just hasn't had the coach to come in and execute the game plan and really be able to put pen to paper of the roster that he's trying to build. Now we're seeing Ben Johnson come in and do just that, really looking great. And I think this is what the Bears thought that they could be. We're now seeing that come to fruition. So I'm excited about what's going on in Chicago, but I think it's just the beginning. We're finally seeing it's starting to work. I think as they trust themselves more and more, they're going to be able to make more moves. And we're going to start to see things on the defensive side of the ball fill out a little bit more. We're going to see, bigger moves made on that side. We always saw like Montez Sweat, a guy like that, Kevin Byard picking him up. What a great move that was. Really great leading this team for interceptions. Just doing a lot of good stuff. But I think overall, Bears, great decision making. The marriage of Poles and Johnson seems to be working very well early on. I would be really excited if I'm a Bears fan about the future of this roster.
Yeah, you brought up a great point when you talk about the execution with Ben Johnson, right? And that was sort of the question with Johnson. We all understood going into the Chicago Bears situation with him becoming the head coach, good X's and O's guy, good schemer, obviously the clever trick plays, really good at working with quarterbacks, right? He already proved that. That's what we knew. The question was, could he execute player development, roster management? There was no, red flags to say he couldn't. He just hadn't done it yet. And so far, based on moves like with Trapillo, he certainly has validated that he can be that kind of head coach. So that obviously is a great time for Chicago, like you referred to, for their future. But let's talk about the present, and let's talk about this weekend's game. And Miles, if you don't mind pulling up our graphic here, breaking down the game ahead of the matchup per ESPN, excuse me. The matchup predictor from ESPN Analytics has the Packers actually with a 68.7% chance to win, the Bears with a 31% chance to win. There's actually a decent chance here of a tie. Again, that's not 100% there just because the Packers and the Cowboys, as they proved earlier this season, a tie is still possible in today's NFL. But you can see the Packers are essentially a 70-30 favorite per ESPN Analytics. Now, I will say, to walk that back just a little bit, the Packers are a team that's going to be very favored with analytical platforms because their defense is really stacked on paper and they've got good quarterback play. And if you got those two elements, those are two things that the analytical websites will always heavily weight. If your quarterback has great numbers and your defense has a lot of stars, which the Packers obviously do, that'll heavily weight to really good performance in terms of an analytical evaluation. So Bears fans, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Now let's go look at the odds here at the bottom per DraftKings there. You can see the Bears right now are a 6.5-point road underdog against the Packers, which feels a little high for me. And I understand the apprehension from the sports books. I really do. Because right now, the Green Bay Packers, in everyone's mind, are the best team in football on paper. And realistically, they should be. They got a talented young quarterback. They got a good back. They've got good receivers on paper. Offensive line has a few issues, but they got talented high draft picks there. They spent some money there. They've got a coach with a lot of experience. They got a defense that's just loaded. I mean, the Packers, they went all in this year. They were all in. They, all of their cap space for the next 2 years, both their first round picks, they're 100% all into the situation right now with this year. And with that in mind, the sports books are saying, listen, we trust them more. We don't trust the Bears yet completely, right? Even though the Bears put together a dominant performance against Philadelphia, that's what the sports books are countering right here. I think the Bears prove them wrong. I really do. Now, I don't know if they win the game. It's going to be a heck of a game. I'm excited to watch it. But I don't think this is going to be a game where the Packers look good. I think the Bears present them with all kinds of problem. And if the Packers win, it's because they pull something, out at the very end, maybe a last-second field goal or something like that. I think the Bears go to Green Bay and hit them in the mouth. I think we see a physical ground game led by the emergence of Kyle Monangai and Ozzie Trapillo playing a massive role, really dictate to a Packers defense when they're facing good competition like the Cowboys. For example, earlier this year, the Packers defense gave up 40 points to Dallas, right? The Carolina Panthers, they moved the football against Green Bay, right? The Packers have surrendered some yardage. They have surrendered, the Detroit Lions moved the ball in Green Bay on Thanksgiving, for example, right? This Packers defense, when they play good offenses, can surrender some yards. I expect that to happen this upcoming Sunday. It's going to be a heck of a game. I don't know which direction it's going to end, but I think the Bears go into Green Bay and they hit them in the mouth a little bit, and it's going to be a fun one to watch. But I think Chicago is perfectly suited to pull off an upset this weekend.